Hey Michael, I'm excited to show you some things, and the goal is to not only get you back, but get you back better than what you were before. And that's the exciting part, but it's the challenging part, especially with a pitcher. It's such a complex movement, we can't treat it like a typical shoulder. And I want to address a couple of deficits that I see and that typically don't get picked up with traditional therapy and rehab. And I recall having a pitcher that came to me as a semi-pro. He had a rotator cuff done, he had his labrum done, and he'd been doing therapy for about 5 months, and he still wasn't able to throw. He had good shoulder strength. He can do this kind of stuff, do this kind of stuff, do these things, had good shoulder strength, but it wasn't flowing. He didn't have the sync between his shoulder and the rest of his body. So I started him off with a test that I do to check their shoulder blade strength, and that hadn't been addressed. So what I want to do is show you this test. It's not only a test, but it's also an exercise. So I'm going to demonstrate it here on Brian. And what you're going to do, Michael, is I'm going to have you do it on your good arm, your non-injured arm to start with. That's going to be our comparison. So this Brian is right-handed. I'm going to have him start on his left hand. So I'm going to have him get in push-up position. So Brian, go ahead and get in push-up position. And if you look at his feet here, his feet are too wide. I want you to get your feet a little bit closer together, because that makes it too easy if your feet are too wide. Okay, let's get him back here. So on his left arm, on his good arm, I'm going to have him do this reach through. So Brian, I want you to reach through so you're rotating your body on your arm. So go ahead and do a few of those. There you go, and come back up. So he's not just throwing his arm through, he's actually rotating his body on his arm. And I'm going to have you do as many as you can till you can't do any more. This is going to be the comparison. This is good for him. Okay, let's have you switch and go to your other arm. Let's have you go to your injured arm. And I want you to get the camera on his shoulder blade here. So go ahead. That looks pretty good. If you look at this shoulder blade, it doesn't come up too far. Let's have you go back to your other side. And let's have you do it again. I want to make sure that your arm is underneath your body. You don't want your arm out here. You want it directly underneath your body. Okay, go ahead and do this one again. And if you look at this shoulder blade, it does stick out a little bit more, especially right in here. So he's definitely has more strength on this side because the scapular muscles aren't able to keep that shoulder blade locked against the rib cage. So what I saw with this pitcher that came to me, I had him do that on his good side. He did about 20 reps, which is very good. Most people can't get to about 10, and that's about it. So he had great strength on his good side. I had him do it on his injured arm. One time through, boom, he fell on the ground. He couldn't do it one time. So we started with just doing some of those. Within 2 weeks, he was able to do more than 20 on his injured arm. And he was already looking better just from that one thing. Another thing I want to address is with an athlete that came to me that had some posterior shoulder problems, some laxity in his capsule. They had to shrink it up. And so I just did a whole biomechanical screen on this guy, and it wasn't the shoulder's fault. He had a leg length discrepancy. He was a right-handed thrower. He had a leg length discrepancy on that right side. It was a little bit shorter. And what he would do, if you can get the camera to my foot, is he would externally rotate. He would open that foot up in his stance position. And that tightened his hip musculature up. You can bring it back up. So when he'd get in that pitcher stance, he couldn't load his hip properly. His hip was weak, it was tight. He couldn't rotate through it. He couldn't extend through his hip. So when he'd start his wind up, it was already off. So he would have to compensate through his shoulder. Also on his other leg, his hamstring, because of that leg length discrepancy, his hamstring was tight. It was weak, he couldn't lengthen it. And I'm not talking about strengthening, just doing hamstring curls. When he had to follow through on that pitch, he couldn't decelerate the follow through because that hamstring wouldn't let him do it. So what happened? His posterior capsule, his posterior shoulder took up the slack. It got chewed up. It wasn't the shoulder's fault. It was all this biomechanical stuff going on. So what I had to do, I had to address that, get that cleaned up, make him look better here with the leg length discrepancy, get his hips going. But then I had to reintegrate his shoulder back into his legs. So he had a full wind up, he had a full follow through. And doing this stuff wasn't going to cut it. Doing this stuff wasn't going to cut it. We had to do sport specific, pitching specific exercises, drills to address not only the causes, the leg length discrepancy, but the compensations and then eventually the shoulder. So I'm going to show you a drill. I call this the STAR drill. This is a pretty tough drill. And what we're going to use I have no idea where you're at in your therapy, or in your rehab, so you're going to have to make this specific to where you're at. You may not be able to use any weight to start with, so I'll let you determine that. This is going to be on the high end once you're getting closer to throwing. And I like to use this mace bell. You can start off with a 3-pound dumbbell or a 5-pound dumbbell. It doesn't really matter, but I do like to use this thing because of the lever arm. You hold it up here, it's pretty easy. You hold it down here to do these drills. You're not only working the shoulder, the core, the hip, but you're going to get the forearm, you're going to get the whole package. It just makes it a lot tougher. We're going to start with it up here. This is a 15-pounder, it's pretty difficult. I would like for you to be able to do this. My guys can do this by time we've done this a little while and they're ready to throw. So I'm going to demonstrate this drill. It takes a lot of coordination. This drill is to reintegrate the shoulder back in with the legs. So I'm going to have you do this one. Yeah, so I'm going to have him demonstrate it. This is for his right. He's a right-handed thrower. Okay, let's go back to the start. You can see he's not doing it very good. So what I'm going to have him do is you're going to kind of lunge with that left leg and you're going to rotate through it. You want your foot to be flat here. You don't want it to open up because I want you to be able to rotate and get through that hip. So as soon as you come out of that, Brian, the goal is for you to come back like this. So you're going to have to explode off of that hip and come back. So you got the hip strength and able to open up. You want your arm about 90 degrees in here, which is hard for after rehab to get that external rotation. A lot of times your pecs are tight, your core's tight. Crunches and sit-ups aren't going to do that. You need to be able to open up through here. That's how you wind up. By the time you finish throwing, you've got all this length here. So we need to be able to accentuate that. So let's try it again. So explode off of it. There you go. Okay, back to the start. And you're going to go all the way around. I have these cones set up. What I do is I take 3 steps, 1, 2, 3, and place the cone down. That's about what you want to do this drill. I set them up at 3, 6, 9, and 12, and then put them in between as well. By the time you get all the way around, you are totally stretched out. You're warmed up. Again, you can do it with no weight just to get it going. Eventually, you want to add some weight to it, so you have to decelerate this motion and open up through here. Let's try it one more time, Brian. I really want you to explode off of that push leg. Up, there you go. Okay, that looks pretty good. Go back to the beginning and I want you to stop once you get opened up. And, okay, stop right there. So I want his arm open like this. And I want this foot touching the cone. So get that foot out there. Okay, there you go. So he's having to open up through here. So he's having to take a big step. He's having to explode off of that leg to take a big step to stride out. And eventually I'm going to time this drill. Once he gets the form down, looks good, has good control of it, I'm going to time it because I want this to be a speed drill. So he's really going to have to explode. He's going to have to take big steps, not short steps, so he can increase his time. And it is very difficult to integrate that shoulder in with this. The coordination is very difficult, especially after an injury, after a surgery, so this is a huge one. That's just a couple drills I wanted to show you. Again, start with where you need to start. This is only a couple of the many things that I would do for an athlete that's coming back, especially a pitcher. You can't treat it like a typical shoulder. I like the quote that you said is, a pitcher needs to trust his stuff to do what it's meant to do. It wasn't meant to do this. It wasn't meant to do this. It wasn't meant to do these artificial exercises. That's not necessarily going to help you pitch better. We got to get you back better than what you were before. I do want to share the scripture with you, Ephesians 3:20. To him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine. I want that to be over you because I know you've got in your mind where you see yourself, how you're going to come back, where you're going to be in your career. And I believe God is going to do more than that for you. So good luck. Let me know if I can help you.